Harrison.
Brother historian, how are you today, sir?
I'm well, sir. We're continuing our education into how to become a proper World War II soldier. How to turn, as you put it so eloquently, from an Iowa farm boy into a killing machine of those dastardly Huns.
Yes.
Earlier, we learned how to use cover. If somebody's shooting at you, and there's something that you can get behind that will stop bullets, well, you should get behind that thing.
Yes, it's called ducking, and surprisingly, you have to be taught how to do that.
Ducking.
I would have thought that would have been like a natural instinct, like, oh shoot, there is something lethal coming towards me. I must get down on the ground to avoid it.
Here I thought ducking was a city in China.
Yes, famous for its royal king, for its royal ducks.
Anyways, we're here today to learn how to destroy German tanks. World War II War Department training film 25804. It's the 25,804th film they put out about how to train these Iowa farm boys. Anyway, sir, do you have anything via introduction? We haven't watched this at all. Your thoughts heading in. We have thoughts and predictions.
Well, I've seen this movie once before when you suggested it. By the way, this is the second video that Historian has suggested that we watch. So that's 2 for him, and how many for me? Are we still keeping score?
11 billion.
11 billion for me, 2 for him. So yeah, I'm liking your suggestions.
For this movie, I don't know. I got to thinking about tank life, and would you rather be on foot? Would you rather be an infantryman, or would you rather be on a tank crew in World War II?
That's a good question. Now, are we talking? Which army are we talking? Because if I want to be in a tank, if I'm going to be a tank crew, I want to be inside of a German Tiger tank. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that Tiger tanks are actually just one breakdown away from being worthless.
Well, I do want to know what you meant by that, but famously, the Allies won by mass producing Shermans, which were
T-34s,
which were of course wildly inferior to the German model, but the Germans couldn't make as many as we could. So
that's true.
we swarmed them with inferior technology, but we had so many more it didn't matter. Essentially,
quantity is a quality all its own, my friend.
Yes,
I remember when I watched Fury for the first time, and
Unseen by Me.
You haven't seen Fury?
I have not.
Fury is the only movie that has an actual Tiger tank in it.
Oh.
Tiger 131, and that's the story of how that came into Allied possession is a topic for another video, but very interesting. But yeah, so from what I understand it, Sherman tanks, the Germans called them Tommy cookers, because they were basically German shell will go through it like a knife through butter. And I remember when I was watching Fury, like this is like near the war's like virtually over at this point, but the Germans are still going like, we're gonna fight to the last man. So the Sherman tank had been updated by then, but yeah, there was this one scene at the very beginning where, spoiler alert, they counter attack and they get this lead Sherman gets hit by something called a Panzerfaust. Basically, think RPG 7 only German, and yeah, it was not a pleasant scene to watch these guys like literally burning to death in their own tank.
You know, I don't know if this is like a hot take or whatever, but that's a very unusual strategy for a Western country to deploy, and they certainly wouldn't do it today. To where okay, we're going to put our men in like horrible danger, and we're acknowledging that we're going to have a very high body count using this strategy, but we are still going to win. That seems like a very non-Western sort of like in an asymmetric sort of warfare. That seems like something that the underdog would use. The Algerians, the Vietnamese, etc. Of course, that's from a very different era of warfare than World War II. It's just weird to hear, like, as I said, a Western country employ that strategy.
But ambushing?
Not ambushing so much as we know we're going to go into battle with this very inferior sort of technology, and we acknowledge that we're going to have very high casualties because of that, but we just have so much of it, we're going to win.
I think it has to do with something like with philosophy. I mean, back in those days, people went to war kind of semi-expecting that they were going to get themselves killed. I mean, how many Americans got killed during the Second World War? Something around like 75,000. No, that's the Vietnam War. You lost 75,000 there.
I honestly don't know.
You lost quite a few men. Whereas
a number sticking out in my head is 250,000. I can't speak to the veracity of that without Googling.
you go to war back then, it kind of expecting to die, whereas nowadays you go to war and it's almost a shock when soldiers get killed.
To an extent, you're always kind of fighting the last war. That's another sort of aphorism where like famously World War One was like, oh, we have all
War
this...
to end all wars.
Right.
It just set up the most deadliest century in human history.
Right. The modern technology with very primitive tactics. They're still rushing at each other like it's a Napoleonic war. Well, now we have chain guns. So, again, you're always fighting the last war, in a sense. And you see that a bit with Vietnam in the use of, like, the selective service. You know, like, the World War II era, I feel like the draft was not controversial. This was something we're going to do to support the country. We're all in this together. And then Vietnam rolls around, and it's like the draft is really probably the single thing that changed public opinion about that war. You know, it's something lags behind every era, I guess.
The German tanks were notorious for just breaking down. The Sherman tank, hopelessly inferior to the Tiger tank, at least early on in the war. And in later stages in the war, the Sherman tank actually could go toe to toe with the Tiger. But with the Tiger tank, Crouch just over engineered them. I'm sorry for calling you Crouch, but that's just how we referred to you back then. But yeah, so apparently more Tiger tanks were lost for like mechanical breakdowns than were actually lost to enemy fire.
And they were chronically short of fuel, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons they invaded Russia, because they wanted to get to the Caucasus oil fields, and also North Africa. Just like we have to fight this war for oil so we can continue our conquest of Lebensdorfs in Russia.
Fighting wars for oil. Luckily, this is the last time that ever happened.
Let's not start that again.
So I get the sense, just having seen 5 seconds of this film, that it's going to be about how guys on foot can stop a German tank. Which I know I referred to it multiple times in our last World War Wednesdays, but of course brings to mind the climax of Saving Private Ryan.
Pistol Master.
Yes.
Takes out a Tiger tank with just a .45.
Yeah, which of course brings to mind the wonderful film Patton, where he's being dive bombed and he takes out a pistol and starts shooting at it.
Speaking of that film, the Patton film, they were actually using Patton tanks in that film instead of Sherman tanks.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go.
Tank destroyers are the best tools for the job, but men alone with the proper weapons can be very effective and very deadly. Tanks look tough, and they are. But there's no tank that can't be knocked for a loop by a tank hunter if he has guts.
And we have the M1 Stuart standing in for the German Panzer.
You seldom find a tank tearing along like this, except in
Used with a head.
newsreels or Hollywood comedies. Actually, going across country, a tank sometimes gets up to 15 miles an hour. But 8 or 9 miles an hour, like this, is usually tops. In battle, a tank doesn't have things all its own way. It gets kicked around by the terrain. It's slowed down by gullies and trees. It has to fight its way through swamps and thickets. And it has to batter and grope its way through and around 1,000 obstacles.
Comports with several
Buttoned
video
up,
games I've played.
A tank is 9/10 blind. Plant yourself in the driver's seat.
Ever play War Thunder?
Take a look. And
I
this
was
is what it
obsessed with
sounds
that for
like
like 3 weeks,
with the engines
and then
turned on.
I moved on to other things somehow. But yeah, it's a wonderful game.
9/10
Yeah,
blind.
you must have gone up against the Russians.
Probably.
And, Russian bias confirmed. War Thunder players, you will understand that reference. It's a Russian-made game, and everything Russian kicks like a freight train. They've actually got like a properly drawn German tank here, but they've got a Stuart as the live-action
Tank
tank.
hunters, get this.
Well, they probably didn't
Perhaps
have
the
one.
most important thing for you to remember.
Like to film the
When
movie,
that
they probably
turret
didn't have
swings,
like a German tank
The
to
guns
use.
inside.
Yeah,
are
that's
fixed.
true. All the captured German tanks are probably being stripped down and examined. Like, how do we kill these things better?
Right.
So this tank can't fire in all directions at the same time.
So it's saying that it can't fire at the same time. I think a few Russian tanks actually had machine guns on the backs of their turrets.
Damn.
And even with a power-driven turret, it takes a few seconds to turn from one side to the other. Those few seconds are all a skillful tank hunter needs to get in close without coming under fire. Any area
I
not
mean,
covered by
like
fire
widespread
at a particular
tank
time,
technology at this
or
point
that
was
can't
what?
be covered by
20
fire,
years old?
is called dead space.
30?
20 years old, thereabouts.
The guns on a
First tank
can't
that
be
I think the
depressed far
first
enough to cover the
tank
ground
that
close
came
in.
in. First tanks were in World War One in 19. I want to say 17.
And these
Thereabouts.
these farm
That
lads
gives us
didn't
a
have
circular
Google.
dead
They
space
didn't have
around the
YouTube to
tank
go watch
with
like
a
stuff
radius
about
of
tanks and
about
stuff.
20 feet.
Like the richer ones would have had like tractors or something. But,
Yeah.
I think the rest.
Still another mechanical weakness of tanks is that
I think in the Red Army, like a lot of Red Army soldiers, they'd never even seen a car before, and then here comes the German army with
Yeah.
their tanks and. Comrade, what is that?
You want to talk about dragons?
It's like Romans going up against Hannibal's elephants.
Right.
Dead space.
Huh.
I think you got it reversed. Everything below those lines is dead.
Right.
Every tank has vulnerable spots. First of all, remember exposed personnel. They're easy targets when tanks aren't buttoned up.
So September 1939, Germany invades Poland, and contrary to popular belief,
This locks
tanks
the turret and
weren't
keeps it from turning.
the main thing, weren't the main battle weapon back then. They still had, all nations back then still had cavalry, shockingly.
Sprocket
Right.
wheels.
So
And
the story
divers.
goes that this German tank
Tanks
platoon
carry thick armor
ran
in
into
some
this
places
Polish
and thin armor in others.
cavalry unit, and the Poles, not knowing any better, just charged the tanks, and they were obviously massacred.
It's
But the
thinner
story
on the
goes
back
that one of the
and on the
Poles,
rear.
with his hunting
And
lance,
thinnest on top.
got it through the viewport of the German tank
And on the
and
bottom.
killed the driver. So the last
Yes.
victory. Though there is some evidence to suggest that didn't actually happen.
Smash
So
tanks on foot. You've
I
got
don't
to know
care.
your
I
lines
want that
and
story to
how
be true.
the last charge of the winged hussars.
It's
And the winged hussars arrived. Sabaton fans,
And
you
the
can thank me
rocket
later.
grenade with the rocket launcher.
it's got a little Molon Labe feel to it. Little
The members of this
little come and
tank
take them,
hunting
if
team
you
are
will.
armed with carbines. They're handy weapons against vision devices. Small
M1
arms fire
carbines.
will make tanks button up fast. Sometimes a lucky hit on the turret ring will jam the turret.
Not with that pistol
on that.
cartridge in
Yeah,
there.
that's
M1 Garand,
This
maybe.
rocket grenade is walking death, and every tanker has a healthy respect for one of them. Here's a solid slab of steel, over 2 inches thick. Behind it is a silhouette target.
Less clear.
Here's where that grenade hit. And here's where it came out. It'll
It's the
penetrate
molten
most tank
river
armor
of
and
molten
do this to
copper.
the men
Is what
inside.
goes through.
That salt and pepper effect was made
Really?
by
Wow.
fragments of white
Yeah,
hot steel.
that's how. It's just basically a shaped charge. What happened was, squashes out the explosion. The
These are
copper
anti-tank mines.
melts through the
They'll
armor,
blow the
goes
track
through,
off
and then
any tank that hits
wow.
yeah, nasty way to die.
And it would punch through steel.
Another weapon of the
2
tank
inches at
hunter is the
least.
smoke
Wow.
grenade.
At least with those bazookas and Panzerfausts. RPG-7, I think, could
And then put in the
is a little
knockout.
more powerful.
But
Mhm.
remember, smoke is tricky. You've got to practice with it to get the best results. And when you use it, you really have to watch the way the wind blows.
Why does
That's
he
one
do
of the
that?
things that Brad Pitt used in Fury when his spoiler when
Now
his
let's take a look at a tank
Shermans went up
hunting
against
team
the
in
Tiger.
action.
They just shot
And
smoke in
don't
his face to
forget that
blind
word.
it.
Did he do that Heisman
First of all,
pose before he
how
threw
come
it?
These men are hunting tanks
No,
on
I
foot?
think it's more like, oh, get it out, and then
Yeah.
just book it.
Yeah.
They might be the crew of a disabled destroyer out to square accounts. They might be part of a security section
Out to
whose
square accounts.
destroyers are too hotly engaged or too far away to meet a new threat in this area.
Old timey
Or then
wittiness.
again, they might be the members of a reconnaissance patrol, suddenly faced with a setup they've been looking for.
Is that a tank? Yep.
These men know their stuff. They know the value of teamwork and cooperation. They're equipped with the proper weapons, and they know how to use them. This is the tank hunter's dream. Makes a pretty good target, doesn't he?
He's sticking his head out of the top.
Yeah.
No, our tank hunters don't let him have it. Not yet.
Wait until you see the whites of his eyes.
They're not going to take any chances of missing that baby. So they hold their fire until the tank's practically at point-blank range. Then they give the works to the crew. They slam a grenade through the thin side armor. And it's all yours, Adolf.
Battle always seems so
We've
calm in
examined
these
some of the
training
weaknesses
videos.
of tanks, the weapons most commonly employed against them.
The
and
panic
functioning
screaming
of
is
the
for when they
tank
leave the training theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, ah, Sergeant, what do we do? What do we do? Yeah, yeah. Just, yeah.
What's making this bird stop dead in his tracks?
Just making it.
A couple of rows of tin cans set up like 10 pins across the road? Well, put yourself in the place of that tank crew. How do they know if those cans are mines or a fake?
Gunner, machine gun those
Two
things.
choices.
Right.
That's one of them.
That's
To
what I'd be saying.
investigate the situation.
Just,
That's tricky as hell. Just set up 10 cans across the road?
yeah, I
to
guarantee
slow
you that
down?
never worked. I
Yeah.
guarantee you that never worked.
The other is to back up and hunt for another route. And that baby isn't backing up far.
Yeah, the
That's
third
why
option
tank
is just to
hunters
have your
goes into the
machine
field.
gunner light them up, and
Right.
here come I get mad.
Got to stop to investigate, giving our tank hunters an ambush a chance to hit the jackpot.
Guarantee you that that sheet and the tin cans
another
probably
one.
never worked.
Enemy tank that's run out of gas. Fouled its
That sheet
track,
is very, very
or stalled
deceitful
because of
camouflage.
engine trouble.
Again,
This
just
baby can't travel,
bunch of
but
just
he's well protected.
light it up with a
Yeah.
machine gun
From
burst,
lane
and if something
attack,
blows up, well, we
and
know that was a
still
trap.
mighty dangerous.
Yeah.
He'd be a setup for a tank destroyer. Let's see how tank hunters would handle it. They're a little too far for a rocket grenade because the branches of the tree may deflect the rocket.
Oh yes,
So they
many
split
a
up,
computer
attack the
game
tank from two sides.
player has known
Two
that.
men with a launcher, the third man on
I
his
once played this Medal of Honor game
own. A carbine shot
where
at the tank
I lined
commander
up
drives him down to
perfect
the
headshot on one guy, pulled the trigger, and this tiny little twig deflected my bullets.
I'm sure that was frustrating, but I love that they made the physics that, like, accurate.
While their teammate attracts the tank's fire, the grenade crew sprints
Oh, what
to
a
another
job.
piece of cover closer to the tank.
Yep, I get that's hazard pay right there.
Hey, Joe, you're the bait.
I remember, if you die, it's $10,000 GI Joe life insurance.
Their
Played
partner
football
again
with Red
draws the
Grange
tank
at
fire
the
away
University
from
of
their
Notre Dame. Great.
and the turret guns swing away.
Again, I think I'd want to invest in a high explosive shell. A wasted machine
Man
gun
with a
bullets,
rocket
buddy.
launcher breaks
Right.
cover and makes a final dash to get within bazooka range of the tank.
Did you have Bazooka Joe
Now
gum
he's
as a
close enough
child?
to make sure of a hit.
No, I've never heard of it.
It's Out
Okay.
of the scrap and into the scrap.
Maybe an artifact of the 80s.
On a narrow road through heavy woods where the tank has to stick close to one.
So a
root.
question I would ask here in
These men
boot
have
camp
to work
is,
fast.
why don't we just have one bomb that's big enough to stop them instead of having to tie together 4?
Ace the miss, the first one.
The enemy tank they've spotted is already heading across the field toward the gap in the wall.
That thing's booking it, too. Little tank POV shot.
The trick is to wait till the tank is so close that the string of mines is inside its dead space. Now let them have it.
Oh, I see.
That tank won't go far. Not on that track.
Yeah, but the turret's still alive.
Yeah.
Probably.
A tank hunting team may encounter its tank under different conditions, possibly in a place like this. Perhaps they're out of grenades. So this time they decide to blind the tank with smoke and get in some close work. A tough log or a fence post is the main prop. This team is on his toes.
I remember hearing this one story about a Russian tank that held up the entire German army for almost a day and a half.
A
Yes.
smoke grenade in front of the tank
It was
slows
a
him down.
KV-2 tank, basically.
And another
Think like
behind
regular
the
tank
leaves
body,
a
but with like
complete
a
line.
gigantic,
Tank
like
can't get out of this
105
gully, and there's very
millimeter
little
gun,
wind,
or even
so
Hell
the
yeah.
smoke
twice
will
that.
stay where
Like,
it's put.
this tank was designed to break
While the rest of the
bunkers.
team
What was it
And
like?
apparently, what happened
soldier with
was,
the log closes in on the tank
Go
under
ahead.
cover of the smoke.
so apparently this tank was designed to kill bunkers. Or what happened was it got hit on the middle of a road, tracks blown off.
When the
But
log reaches the
crew inside was
idler
like,
wheel,
"Screw you,
it will
Germans!
either
We're gonna
break the
start
track
lobbing shells."
or jam it so
So-
the tank can't move.
And they held up the German advance for a day and a half. No, they didn't survive, but
While he does
Lads
this,
back then
the
were
rest
built
of the
different.
team stand by to pick off the tank.
I think it was a combination of if we run away, we're gonna get
And
shot by our
one more tank
commissars,
will never
and
find
yeah,
its way
the enemy's
home.
coming this way. We got to fight.
That's some Leonidas
They're
at
not in
Thermopylae
secret
shit
tank
right there.
In fact, these are just a
Beast
few
mode.
samples out of the bag. You can think up a dozen new ones if you put your mind to it. The important thing is to remember the tank's limitations. Memorize its weak spots. Know the weapons you have to use and how to use them. And above all, remember your mission as a tank hunter. Whether you hunt from a destroyer or on foot. Seek, strike, destroy.
Seek, strike, destroy. Oh, Babe Ruth, King of SWAT, in perfect control. That'll be it's World War II era, I guess. So that maybe be a next one to do. But
Maybe.
Brother Harrison, we've learned a few things about destroying tanks in World War II Europe.
Well, at least we've learned how to destroy an M1 Stuart tank.
Yes. What are your initial thoughts on the training video here?
As you said, they were built different back then. I know for the fact that if I were a grunt in World War II, I see an enemy tank coming towards me, I'm turning around and I'm running the other way.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with that. That's a 50-ton monster coming towards me.
I think that's probably true of training videos in really like any profession. Like, I've watched a dozen training videos from different jobs, and it's always like, "Oh, hello, customer. Oh, I hear you have a complaint. Let me listen to you, apologize, solve your problem, and thank you for bringing it to my attention."
They never teach you how to deal with the Karens of the world.
Exactly. Yeah. So then when you actually get that complaint, and like it's a human being who's like screaming in your face over something like inconsequential, like the training video didn't really prepare you for the realities of what you were going to be facing. So that's probably, I would assume, about the same here. Like, oh, battle seems so calm, and then they actually get into it, and you're like, fuck, Jesus, shit, try not to die, God, fuck. But
Yeah, basically.
still, like with the last one, I think probably very effective. A little more general than I would have expected. You know, it's a very like non-specific, like vague directions they're giving these guys.
Well, I think it was basically still a new science back in the day. Like,
I think that's true. Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, there weren't that many tank battles in between the world wars. I know there was at least one tank on tank combat back in World War One, and the Germans, they did come up with like an anti-tank rifle during the First World War. But then, when the war ended, like there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to test out the new stuff because the war was over, and it was 20 years of just building up for World War II Electric Boogaloo.
This time it's personal.
It was for the Germans.
It really
too.
was, yeah.
The Treaty of Versailles shall be avenged.
It's just weird, like, seeing it with, 2020 eyes. And, like, I assume they got into a little bit more specifics and, like, the nitty-gritty of what to do on the battlefield when they were out in the field. And, like I said in the last video, this is probably what they showed them to start the training lesson. And then they went out and got a lot more specific.
Yeah. I think one of the things that they would teach the troops how to do is, regardless of what country's tank you're fighting up against, best place to shoot it, right up its ass. Apparently that's where the armor is thinnest, and that's where the engine block usually is. So you take the engine block out, that's usually where the gas tank is, and well, boom.
I was thinking a lot about that question of whether I'd rather be a foot soldier or a member of a tank crew. And I like when shit hits the fan, I feel like I'd rather be a foot soldier. Like in good times when we're winning, I feel like I'd rather be part of a tank crew. But like when it goes bad and you're inside that like walk-in closet basically.
I think you and I are too tall to be in a tank.
Yeah.
I'm 6'1", and you're about. I think you told me you're around the same height, right?
In that neighborhood, yeah.
I think they wanted guys like 5'0" or 4'5".
Yeah.
I remember going aircraft carrier in South Carolina, and the USS Yorktown, named after the one that was destroyed at Midway, and I also got to go on a B-17 Flying Fortress, and holy crud, those people were dwarfs back then. Yeah. I was banging my head off of everything. I think I still got the scar somewhere. Yeah. Anyway.
Which, to be fair, those small folks were in greater abundance back then. I think that has a lot to do with like nutritional differences. But like, if you read a paper about a football team, They talk about the biggest guy on the team being 180 pounds. I'm like, it's me in like my sophomore year of high school. Like, weird, not so fun fact. In 1999, I worked at JCPenney for 3 months. The clothing store, JCPenney. I worked with this fella called Patrick O'Day. His mother was an Irish immigrant. Therefore, Patrick O'Day, the most Irish-sounding name of all time. Just a very American teenager, a very cool dude. He was my age. Fast forward about 15 years, I'm reading a book by John Krakauer called Where Men Win Glory. It's mostly about this guy, Pat Tillman, who quit the NFL to join the military, to join the Afghanistan war. But I come across...
Oh, that ended.
Yeah, yes. I come across the name Patrick O'Day as one of the first casualties in the war in Iraq. Thought, well, that's an odd coincidence. I look it up. Turns out it was the guy I worked with in 1999. His tank crew went off a bridge in Baghdad.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs, I hope you enjoyed our review of How to Kill a Tank circa 1941. Remember to tune in next week, well, for another episode of World War Wednesday or Monster Movie Monday, whichever comes first, historian. Get those movies out, man. No, you'll be fine. I will not put you in the stocks this time. Anyway, hope you remember to like, comment, and subscribe because the YouTube algorithm needs to be appeased. It is a Lovecraftian horror that needs it needs its sacrifices. Anyway, and also
blood for the blood god.
Links down in the description down below to Historian's main channel and to my channel. This has been your hosts, Harrison MacArthur, Draco Pendragon, and the World Renowned Historian, signing out.
Be good, kiddos. We out. Thanks for watching.